SPJIMR's Center for Wisdom and Leadership presents its podcast series, Sapience. It is about the practical aspects of a wisdom-based approach on leadership, various global and societal issues.
Hello, welcome to Sapience, a special podcast series brought to you by SPJIMR, Center for Wisdom and Leadership. I am Surya Tahora, Executive Director of CWIL, and today for the 5th episode, I will be in conversation with Monica Ardelt. Monica Ardelt is a professor of sociology at the University of Florida. She is a founding faculty member and member of the advisory committee of the University of Florida Center for Spirituality and Health. She is the developer of the widely used three-dimensional wisdom scale, and she has several publications to her credit in the area of successful human development, with particular emphasis on the relations between wisdom, spirituality, aging well, and dying well. So, good evening, Monica, and good morning for you. So you are calling us and we'll chat one side from India and you are in Florida, right?
That's right.
So welcome, and I'm really honored and also very pleased to have you on this podcast, this Sapience podcast. And I would like to take this opportunity also to thank you for all the support you have given us to this center, to CWIL, and being an advisory, member and helping us, make this center grow in the right direction. So thanks a lot, Monica, for that.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I mean, I'm very happy to be here and to talk to you.
Wonderful. So, Monica, what we're planning to talk about is wisdom in organization. Okay, and if we stop just 1 second and we put these two words together, to some it will appear like a little bit incongruous and a little bit contradictory, right? Wise organization, does it exist, or is it something? What is it about exactly? So I hope that will trigger some curiosity here. At the same time, what I was thinking is that we can, of course, dare to explore, right, this subject matter, because precisely because the organization have grown so much in their influence over society and the power they have to shape society. So we cannot ignore this reflection about, what is an organization about and what is wisdom in an organization and what could be the benefits of having some of this organization becoming wiser. And what is, hopeful is that we'll talk about this, and there are many examples of organizations who are making a step in that direction. So this is, the context of our conversation. And I would like to start maybe briefly by just starting by the beginning, which is the definition of wisdom. So, of course, it's big and it's a big question. But maybe we can come to the model that you have developed, this three-dimensional model, and which you qualify yourself as parsimonious, but at the same time powerful enough to make us understand what is wisdom. So can we speak a minute about this? I mean, some time about this, please? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I should say that I do come to the wise organization research through personal wisdom, because most of my career I have been interested in wisdom in people. And I really started out being interested in aging well and dying well, and the role of wisdom in aging well and dying well. And this is how I came to develop this three-dimensional wisdom model, which is actually, it comes from research by Vivian Clayton, who wrote her dissertation about this. And she interviewed people about what they thought wisdom is, and then came up with all these lists of characteristics, and then gave another group of people these lists and then ask them, do you think this characteristics describes a wise person and describes a person, an older person, and describes yourself? And then they did multidimensional scaling analysis. And in terms of the characteristics, they came up with these 3 dimensions. So the 3 dimensions are cognitive, and this is what Vivian Clayton calls them: cognitive, reflective, and affective. Now, I have renamed the affective component in the meantime the compassionate dimension.
Compassion, yes, I saw that, yeah.
Not just any kind of feeling or emotions, right? It's a really specific compassionate emotions. And the way that Vivian Clayton described it, it goes into this compassionate, benevolent direction. So then when I actually wrote started to write my dissertation, I really wanted to use the concept of wisdom to explain aging well. And at this time, I wasn't sure how to measure it. And so I came across Vivian Clayton's research and I said, okay, maybe you cannot measure wisdom directly, but you should be able to measure the 3 component of wisdom. And that's what I did. And it worked very well. And later on, then when I came to the University of Florida, my faculty mentor asked me, why don't you develop a scale that measures the 3 dimensions of wisdom? And this is how I came to develop the 3-dimensional wisdom scale. So let's define what it is, right? The 3 dimensions. So if people think of what is a wise person, they often think about a wise person knows something that other people do not know. So this is the cognitive component.
So how, if I can interrupt you, how cognitive is different from intelligence? Is it something different? Yeah.
Very, very good question, right? Because a wise person knows something, but if you really think about it, what a wise person knows is actually known by everybody. It's just that they know the deeper meaning of these generally universal truths, and one really very simple example is we are all mortal, right?
Okay.
We all will die. Well, we know this intellectually, right? But
right.
really the deeper meaning, what it means that we are all mortal, that we all will die, and what it means and how we should live our life accordingly. Knowing this. This is something that a wise person knows and that often other people do not know. And so an intelligent person might know a lot of things, but do they know about the deeper meaning of life, what's really important, and how to live one's life? This is what a wise person knows, how to live one's life. And so a wise person doesn't necessarily know, the latest developments in quantum physics or something like this.
Right. So this is exactly what was coming to my mind. Yeah.
So it's
technical
not,
or in skills are there including here or not?
Right. No. What the wise person knows, it's qualitative, it's deep knowledge, rather than quantitative, broad knowledge. It's a deep knowledge, and it's particularly related to the human dimension. So the intrapersonal and interpersonal aspects of life, meaning a wise person knows about themselves. They know thyself. They know, a wise person knows about themselves, and that means they know about their weaknesses and areas of improvement. But a wise person also knows how to interact with other people. They understand other people, and they know how to relate to other people. So this is a cognitive component of the 3-dimensional wisdom model. But to get to this component, to get to this kind of deeper knowledge, deeper truths about the human condition, you need the reflective component. And the reflective component basically means looking at phenomena and events from different perspectives, including oneself. And including oneself means self-examination, self-insight, which can be gained through meditation, for example, or therapy, right? Psychotherapy or any kind of therapy, where you kind of confront yourself and reflect on yourself to understand yourself better. And by understanding oneself better, one understands and accepts one's own weaknesses. And in this way, one can better tolerate and accept the weaknesses of others and understand that we are all in the same boat. We all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, which decreases self-centeredness and makes one more compassionate toward other people. And that's the compassionate component. So these are the 3 dimensions, right, of wisdom.
Okay.
And I tell you how I got to the WISE organization, if I may.
Very good. Yeah.
Now, a couple of years
because
ago.
the question, sorry, Monica.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because the question arises now. You're speaking about a model which seems to be compact, then only the necessary elements, which seems to be encompassing. But then how do we shift from individual perspective to organization? And is this model still valid at a collective level of a sum of people, which is much more than just the sum of the individuals, right?
Right, exactly. So let me tell you how I got to the WISE organization. Okay. So many years ago, I was invited by the College of Education at Harvard, and they have kind of a yearly meeting where they meet with representatives of organizations and try to make the workplace more humane, in general. And one year, their topic was wisdom. And they invited me and said, we want you to give a presentation on WISE organization. And I said, well, I haven't thought about this, I'm talking about WISE people, not WISE organizations.
Right.
But she said, you have this model. You looked at the difference between intelligence, right? Or intelligence or intellectual knowledge and wisdom related knowledge. So you looked at the difference between wisdom and intelligence. Well, why don't you use this kind of model and compare what would be a WISE organization and a not so WISE organization, or in a knowledge-based organization, whereas a WISE organization. And that got me thinking. And that was the beginning of this model that, where I now compare the WISE organization and the not so WISE organization. And now, many years later, I now have a graduate student who actually was interested in studying WISE organization, which gave me the impetus to actually develop this in more systematic fashion, because before I never had the time and the motivation to actually do it in a more systematic way. And that got me to this model really based on the difference between intelligence and intellectual knowledge and wisdom. Now, if I think about this, so starting from the very beginning, what is the purpose, right? What is the purpose of a WISE organization? The raison d'etre, right? The reason for being, of a WISE organization in compared to a not so WISE organization. If you think of a organization business as usual, often what comes to mind is profits, right?
Absolutely.
And not so WISE, an organization wants to make profits, or they want to succeed in some ways. But a WISE organization, the major motivation is not profits, not that they don't want to also earn money, absolutely, right? But the major motivation of a WISE organization is service, is actually service to provide a service to make the world a better place. And that can be anything. That can be a product. That can be actually a service like teaching. That can be healthcare, right? That can be anything, but it is something. A WISE organization exists to offer something to make the world a better place. And then the rest follows from that, right? So this is a basis. So in terms of the reflective dimension, if you think about a wise leader would always take the opinions of their employees into accounts, not just I know it all, not so wise leader would say, I know it, I'm the smartest, I'm the most intelligent, I know what to do, and therefore you just have to follow. A wise
Absolutely.
leader will listen, will observe how are employees doing? Are they happy? Is they grumbling? What can I do better? How can we work together to make the best product, the best service, right? So how can I have, that everybody is in the same boat? And so involve all of the employees to make the best product or service, or to provide the best service. And in the same, that leads to the compassionate dimension of the model, because a wise leader will care about their employees, and not just the employees, they will care about their customers. The customers are not exploited, right? Like you're always coming back to healthcare. Healthcare is such a great example, because healthcare, you think about that, should be a natural, wise organization. Their existence is, to heal people, to make people better. But unfortunately, there are organizations, healthcare organizations, who are there to exploit their customer, who try to get, as much money out of them, or out of the insurance companies, as much money out of them as possible. And caring for them is just a byproduct, because that is a means for them to make the money. They exploit their nurses and their doctors, to get as much work out of them as possible. They burn them out, rather than how could we make the workplace as good as the best possible workplace, so that employees do not burn out, so that they can provide the best care for patients, so that the patients are getting well again and get healed and get the service and get the care that they need, right? And so that would be a good example between a wise organization and a not so wise organization, caring about their employees, caring about their customers, and also caring about their suppliers, the environment, in general, about all the components, and about the community where they are. Whereas a not so wise organization is just exploiting everybody to get maximum profit.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's the major difference between a wise organization and a not so wise organization.
So, from what you are saying, Monica, I understand how you're extending and adapting to the context of an organization what was like self-centeredness or bias and prejudices, or in psychological language,
right,
like governed by your unconscious and your mindsets, which are limiting and things like that, right? And same will apply to an organization. So this is really fascinating. But then what is the next step? Because in your paper that I have read, then you are not just staying there. Now you are trying to categorize different, let's say, kind of characteristic into some families. And so you are speaking, for example, of range, of approach, of the characteristics of the employee who are working for a wise organization. Also the characteristics of the leaders who are working in the wise organization. So I was curious, Monica, how did you get these categories? How did you get to these categories precisely? Yeah. And then we'll speak about a few of them. Yeah.
Yes, and as I said, it actually comes, these categories were developed based on my distinction, or the differences, when I worked on a paper that looked at the differences between intellectual knowledge and wisdom. Really, that's where it comes from. because that was exactly when I looked at the goals, approach, range, not characteristics of leader and characteristics of employees,
No, yeah, right.
but also the relationship to aging, so that really comes from there. This was the motivation to look at this in this way.
Okay, so maybe with Monica, you can we can take some examples to make this
Mhm.
little bit maybe more visual and more striking for our audience. So, for example, if we take the area that you call goals, okay. Uh, what is interesting here that you speak again about this maximization of profit versus really making the world a better place, right?
Right.
So I think this might not need so many examples. We have a lot of, let's say, companies that would come to our mind. There is one other dimension which for me is surprising, which is the not so wise organizations striving for regularity, certainty, operating within like some procedures and rules and so on. And the wise organization will be totally different. So can you maybe explain that and illustrate that with an example, Monica? Yeah.
Well, again, if you think about, if again, it comes from the intellectual knowledge and wisdom,
Right.
because a wise person knows that life is unpredictable, right? Life is unpredictable. You cannot you make plans, but then life happens, right? I mean, that's
Right.
a typical thing. And the wise person knows this. So if this happens, they're not surprised. They also know that change is a constant. The only constant is change. And so again, so they are prepared for this. And whereas if somebody is very intelligent, they might actually try to plan everything to the
Right.
smallest detail so that they are not surprised, of things happening. And that's just not how life works. So,
Scenario planning.
right, right. So,
Yeah.
so the same, if you translate it now to an organization,
Right.
if you have a wise leadership in an organization, if things change, they are not surprised because they are expecting it. And so, therefore, because they are more flexible, because they are working together, they can actually, I would say, motivate their workforce to go with the flow, so to speak, and then change accordingly. And one example is that might not be, not all of those might be qualifying as wise organizations, but one example of this is when COVID hit
Yes.
and demand declined. So some organizations, or there was demand for medical equipment, so some organizations changed their product lines and they produced medical equipment, whatever was needed, breathing machines or whatever was needed, if they could do it. And some organization could do this very well, which meant that they were serving now the population rather than exploiting the moment. If a not so wise organization might be too strict and their workforce might not be used to flexibility. So if they are just taking orders, and so they might not be as quickly able to change course and do something else if the demand is there. So this is how I see the difference between the flexibility and more this planning, and it has to be in this way. And it's not, if it's not anymore, then we have really trouble changing course.
Right. Beautiful. I mean, I love this and how you relate it to from this intellectual, let's say, knowledge and this world of like certitude and certainty and I know it all and then
Right.
being totally open to what might happen and be
open,
ready
right?
and have
Open
the
to new
agility.
trends
Yeah,
and right, open to changing
yeah,
circumstances. So another example would be climate change, right?
right.
And a wise organization would know that yes, climate change is happening, and we have to adapt. We have to change the way of producing things, and we have to do it now. Whereas a not so wise organization was saying, "Well, the laws haven't changed yet. We haven't been forced to do anything different. So let's just wait until the government forces us to do anything, and otherwise it's just
Yeah,
business as usual."
yeah, go by laws and regulation and adhere to that, and finding
Right.
some loopholes when it is in my interest, but otherwise no, I don't make the extra step. Absolutely, yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And there was one thing which I loved in your paper, which is this. So maybe it's worth staying a little bit on that. The approach of a not so wise organization is scientific and technological, you are saying, and in contrast, the wise organization approach will be more moral and ethical. But cannot it be both? I mean, and is it
Yes.
not necessary to have a scientific and tech approach as well? Right?
Right. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not against science and technology, but what I wanted to say that the basis of the approach is from a wise organization is moral and ethical. Whereas for a not so wise organization, they might not think about morality, or that their major goal is to make money to get as the maximum profits. And the example that I could give might be the disaster with the financial sector, where they were using these subprime mortgages, to sell it to people, sell houses to people, and give mortgages to people who really could not afford it. And they did it because they didn't care that they couldn't afford it, because then they sold these kind of mortgages to other people as investment vehicles, so they didn't bear the burden of it. So they made the money on the commissions, to get the mortgages until it all exploded and people just couldn't pay back, and then it all went down. So of these not so wise organization, they only cared about, well, profits, right? We are
Absolutely.
making money on these commissions. They didn't care that the people couldn't afford it, or, to refinance it. Oh, you can get refinanced. This year you only have to pay half of what you have been paying. Never mind, that 2 years later, you will have to pay 3 times as much or 4 times as much, because now it's a
Right.
flexible interest rate, and people weren't told about this. We only cared that they made the profit in this moment. This is what I mean by this. So yes,
Right.
they were figuring this out, with science and technology, how to get the most money out of the most of people, which normally would not have received these mortgages because their credit wasn't good enough or they couldn't really afford it. But in this way, by saying, okay, we just sell it off, we sell it off to other people, so we will not hold the bucket. We will be good, in this way we can make money. They made a lot of money, but it wasn't moral. It wasn't ethical. And a wise
Absolutely.
organization would never do this. They would always think, what we are doing, is it moral? Is it ethical? Is it moral? Is it ethical, to sell cigarettes? No, it isn't, right? So a wise organization wouldn't sell cigarettes, wouldn't sell products that actually hurt other people. Whereas the tobacco industry was saying, people get addicted, people get sick, but never
Good
mind,
for
we're
us.
making a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So Right. So I think that's the difference, not that the wise organization would not necessarily use technology or scientific advancement. This is not what I mean, but the basis is morality. What do we do with our products and services? Do we make the world a better place when we offer this product, when we offer this service, or do we harm people in any way? And
Excellent.
if we harm it, then we will not offer it.
Excellent. And here again, it reminds me of one thing: is that these people in Wall Street or wherever who have created this product, they were smart. In fact, they
Yeah,
were some of
very
the
smart.
smartest people on the planet, and they evolved like a very sophisticated financial product, and nobody could see through.
And they
Right?
made a lot of money, at the beginning before it all came down,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Before it all
Absolutely.
tumbling down because it was just not sustainable. But before that, they made a lot of money. And then they were bailed out by taxpayer money, which is also, very immoral, and they didn't care, and
Absolutely.
they felt entitled to it. Again, this is not a good basis for
Yeah.
an ethical basis. It's not an ethical
Absolutely.
basis.
So there was another element which was like intriguing for me, which was again in the approach. So we have spoken about science and tech versus ethics and morality and so on. There is another one you are saying, uh, uh, contrasting two statements. Life is not fair versus life is fair. So what do
No,
you mean
let's
here?
try to make it fairer. Life
Ah,
might
let's
not
try.
be fair, but let's try to make it fairer.
Life may not be fair, but let's try to make it fair. So, can you explain how that in an organization trickle down to how an organization will treat its employees or try?
Right.
How does it translate exactly?
Right. So if your motto is life isn't fair, then you can be free to exploit your employees. You can relegate your employees to really bad jobs. Treat them basically like a clock in the like a widget. In the machine, and you don't care because yes, you see this is might not be the best thing. That employees can do, and they are exploited, or your suppliers are exploited, but you don't care because life isn't fair, and well, tough luck, right? You just, got
You are
the
on the wrong side.
right, exactly. But if your basis is again morality, and you have an ethical obligation to your workers, to your customers, to your suppliers, then you said, okay, life isn't fair, but let's try to make it fairer. How can you make it fairer? Well, for example, by paying a living wage. Ben and Jerry, they have as a motto, we will pay a living wage, and this is adjusted every year. From where, they're in Vermont, and they look at what is the living wage in Vermont, and they adjust it so that every employee gets a living wage. Whereas others say, well, this is a minimum wage in my state, and why should I pay more? I mean, this is the law. Why should I
Right.
pay more, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Life isn't fair, the government tells me this is how much I only need to pay, and this is what I will, take it or leave it. And whereas a wise organization, as I say, Ben and Jerry as an example, saying, no, we actually want our employees to make a living wage so that they actually have a good life. And the same, you can think about, you're outsourcing your work, into developing countries, and these people only get, I don't know, 10 cents an hour or something for their work. Well, that isn't fair either. A wise organization would say this isn't fair. We have to pay a decent wage to each and everybody, and make sure that our workers are treated well, And we cannot just outsource our problems. We also need to make sure that where we outsource our work, that these people also are treated well. So they are caring for all the people that are involved in making the products. And as I say, with the again, I'm going back to the health insurance,
Yeah.
organizations, which actually, this is where this motto actually comes from my own experience,
Right.
where I was charged an amount in healthcare that was not agreed upon, and then they just, I think it was 3 times as much as it was agreed upon. And I went to the financial officer, or whatever it was the title is. And she said, look, and I said, this was not agreed upon, and now you're just charging me this, and without, I warned me, that it would be. And she said, well, don't you have any, retirement savings? I said, yes, but this is for my retirement. As the definition, it's retirement savings. You could just, just take money from the retirement savings. And I said, well, but other people who are in this other program, in this Florida retirement program, which is basically, they are not saving for their own retirement. They get their retirement once they're retired. They wouldn't
Right.
have the money, right? And say they would just get the retirement. And she was saying, well, life isn't fair,
Oh
And
God.
it's like, no, right? I mean, this just doesn't make sense. You cannot ask me to plunge into my retirement saving only because you are so greedy and want this money, and and again, wise organization wouldn't do it. They would provide healthcare in a way that people can afford it, and not by charging these fantasy amounts of money, just to get as much money as possible from people and from the health insurance.
Yeah.
So
Very true.
the approach is just different,
Yeah.
between the wise organization and the not so wise organization.
So, yeah, it makes me think about similar experience I had also in service industry, and I will not name anyone, but the answer I would have was not life is not fair and just like that, and take it or leave it or whatever. They would say, no, this is the policy and these are the rules of the company.
Right,
So, and I cannot do anything. This is how it is. So they will like take shelter behind this and
right,
then nothing else. I mean,
right,
because these policies are meant in a way to protect themselves and
right,
not serve, as you say, the people, right?
right.
And honoring their needs. And again, this flexibility here can come, and the care that you have, right? Yeah, yeah. So very nice. Now, what else? There is something which is, I think, very essential in these differences between not so wise and wise, which is what you qualify as interpersonal. So, can you tell what is this idea of a wise organization between being interpersonal? Means what does it mean exactly?
Well, I think it goes back to that a wise organization serves all stakeholders, so it's not, whereas a not so wise organization basically serves itself, making as much profits as possible. And so therefore allows market forces, expediency, effectiveness, right, efficiency, rules, right, organizational
Right,
policies, they trump everything, and as long as it's not illegal, we are allowed to do it. We can milk as much profit out of what we are doing as long as it's not illegal, right? And
right,
even so, it means, I might pollute the environment, I might exploit my customer, but it's not illegal, therefore I can do it, right? Whereas a wise organization cares about all stakeholders. And I'm thinking in terms of stakeholders, of course, they are also caring about the owners and the investors. They do want to make money. They want to
Of course.
have their organization to be profitable. Don't get me wrong, because otherwise the organization doesn't exist. They cannot
Absolutely.
serve, right, other people, and, they cannot, make the world a better place. They need to make sure that the organization is a success. But, right, they also care about treating their employees well. So therefore, providing a living wage, providing health insurance, with a retirement account or something, right? Making sure that employees have a secure retirement. It's not just hire and fire, so that they feel secure. And therefore, they reap the benefit of this, because even if employees feel that they are cared about, they will care about the organization, and there will be
Right.
less turnover, less burnout, right? So I think it's actually a good investment. They also will care about their suppliers. They will treat their suppliers well, and therefore the suppliers will be loyal to them. They will like to do enter in a work relationship with them and also stay with them, because it's more pleasurable to work with someone who cares about you. They care about their customers, of course, right? They will not exploit their customer. They will not provide products that will harm their customers. And that means they will get a loyal customer base, because,
Absolutely.
if right, that this is a good organization, you're more likely to put your business there, right? To bring your business there, to if you have a choice, you go to an organization that you like rather than that you don't like. And they will care about the community at large. They will not exploit the community where they are. They will not pollute the environment where they are. They will care about the environment, because it's not just for this generation, but they will care also about future generations.
Great. Monica, I have one question, which is coming. Let's say I am now a CEO of an organization, okay, and I am interested by what you're saying, and I would like to I'm interested in becoming. Taking some steps to become wiser and so on, and nurture wise leader, and have my employees have all these benefits of being engaged, feeling safe, and really strive in this environment, right? But then, how do I go about? How do I apply this kind of map that you have given across several categories of this characteristic of not so wise and wise? What do I make out of it practically now?
Yeah, I think from a practical point of view, the leadership is very important, right? The leadership is very important, and so it's kind of a two-way street. If the leaders are behind it, they need to hire other managers who also buy into this kind of philosophy, and so that you have a leadership team who believes in this kind of philosophy. And then you hire people to also buy into this philosophy. It's kind of a paradigm shift, So that's where I'm saying, we are all in this together. So
Right,
people have to believe in this philosophy, and then at all levels, employees get involved in this. So they get decision making is transparent, and therefore they are also lower level employees get involved in some ways in the decision making process. They have more autonomy in terms of what they can do, so that they feel that they contribute to the organization, which makes them feel more loyal, and then more engaged and more energized, and therefore they will provide better products. But it is really it's a two-way street. It goes,
right,
yes, I think leadership is very important, because they set the tone but they need to have the buy-in from the lower level employees, and it has to be authentic. It cannot be just another management gimmick, and that means, for example,
Right.
right? And one example would really be, what is the difference between the CEO pay and the employee pay? If the CEO, or the management, the higher management team, if they get all the profits, they basically earn much, 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 much more than the lower level employees, then it sounds insincere. So that would mean that the higher CEOs do not, earn, 500 times or 300 times more than the lower level employees. That there is some kind of really sharing, of the profits of what this organization
Right.
makes, so that the lower level employees feel that they are really not only contributing to it, but also reaping the benefits, and I
Right.
think that's major things, this wage inequality, or this really, huge gap between the leadership and the lower level employees, what they are earning, which just contributes to an atmosphere of competition, and not of sharing at all, but just of exploitation. So the sharing would really mean that, yes, the CEO can earn more money than, the lower level employees, because they have more responsibilities and all of this, but not 300 or 500 times more. That just
Yeah,
doesn't make
absolutely.
sense.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. So it means that if I understand you well, I have let's say a series of areas as a CEO that I can work upon, right?
Right.
To shift towards this. Everything can but not be done at the same time, but at the same time they are like intertwined. I mean, if I touch one aspect about employee, the other aspect about my whole attitude and approach also will necessarily change, and vice versa, right? So
That's
it's
right.
beautiful. I just like that. Final question, because I realize we're like well above time. The question will be, where is your research heading about this collective or let's say wisdom? Because one question that I had is that it seems that there is, on one side, not so wise and then wise, but the reality might be that the
Right.
organization go through different stages, right? So is there maybe, are you going to go in that space where you look at it from a developmental kind of approach?
Yeah, no, one of the things what we really want to do is develop a wise organization index, based
Okay,
on this model between not so wise organization and wise organization, kind of measuring
right.
where on the scale from not so wise to really wise an organization is. And then ideally, if we can get responses from employees, how they view the organization, and how they view their leaders and their supervisors. And then we can create this WISE organization index as the average of the employees' perception of the organization and their leadership. And what I've done with these secondary data analysis so far, even so, we are limited in the number of organizations we have, but in this one paper we had 9 organizations, but many employees who answered. And then in this other paper that that I and Bafna was writing, we had 24 international
Okay.
organizations, so from all over the world. And what we found is that, yes, the this and since this was secondary data analysis, we just took what we could get. So it's not a perfect WISE
Right.
organization index, but even this preliminary index, we showed that, yes, the WISE organization index had a positive effect on the perception of wise leadership, or fair leadership, supportive leadership. And then this perception of a fair and supportive leadership had a positive effect on the employees' sense of
Obviously.
flourishing at work,
Right.
well-being at work. And that was positively related to their own subjective well-being and their physical health. So, with other words, there is an indirect effect from a wise organization on the physical and subjective well-being of the employee. And that, of course, means if the employee feels better, if physically and subjectively feels better, they will be better at work. They can have more energy at work. They can actually give more at the workplace, which then benefits the organization, and so it's actually a good investment to have a wise organization.
So you are speaking to the CEO now, trying to convince the CEO to
Right,
go in
exactly.
Okay. So Monica, I'm really very pleased to this conversation was wonderful, and I thank you again for
Yeah,
being with
and
us.
thank you. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking to you.
And looking forward for more. Monica, I know you will do also a research presentation
Right.
in the future, so let's keep in touch. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you.
You were listening to Sapience, a special podcast series by SPJIMR Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai, brought to you by SPJIMR Center for Wisdom in Leadership, produced by Vinita Dwivedi and the communications team.